So we have a very interesting story to share today. But before we get into everything, welcome everyone to the Knowledge Boner Experience. On the show, we talk everything from mindset, the beliefs, opinions, and strategies of entrepreneurship, in the hopes of covering both sides of the spectrum, right? Polar opposites of what people are saying out there in the industry, what people are teaching, so that everyone here can get those knowledge boner aha moments. Take what you want from this, take the best of it, and hopefully that from getting value from both sides, you'll be able to actually go in and apply it, right? So you're not stuck, because let's be honest, in this world of entrepreneurship and marketing, everybody's throwing rocks and throwing so many different ideas and stuff out there, and education can be a double-edged sword. Too much information can be detrimental and keep you from taking action. So today's topic, where we're going to be kind of covering, is when it comes to entrepreneurship, the role of what people are calling themselves, visionaries, people who call themselves CEOs, people who say, let's outsource certain tasks in your business to your employees, right? What does that even mean? What are the do's and don'ts? What does it mean to be CEO? What does it mean to be a visionary? And, can outsourcing even backfire? So it's gonna be really juicy. But how we got on this topic is I'm gonna hand it off to Phung. So Phung, you texted me the other day, and it's so funny. The copy of this guy just automatically, like, super frustrated and annoyed. Missed call, right? Oh man, what happened? So tell us about what happened, and let's go into it.
Yeah. So kind of get everyone a little bit of context and things like that. As I've been working with Dylan, and we collaborate on different things, right? We do a lot of like coaching and mindset training with people and helping people like get aligned on their business and stuff like that. We're more like just get aligned on their goals and like what they're trying to accomplish. And then so yesterday I'm sitting there just in one of these community chats, hanging out and talking with people, and one of the guys gets on the call, or gets in and typed in the chat, and is like, hey, I think this would be a really good idea to have someone go out and connect with this heavy social media guy, right? He's heavy on Twitter. And so he's like, yeah, I would love if we connect with this guy. Maybe, it'd be cool if someone that or someone that we know here can reach out and get contact with them, right? And so what's happening is so we're building this community with this social media following, right? And Twitter being one of the main avenues on like how this space works, right? And just for everyone in, it's the crypto space, right? If you're in crypto space at all, it's like heavy on Twitter, right? Like Reddit and Twitter. So as we're helping one of the artists, right, like they're actually building their platform, they haven't really used Twitter and stuff like that. So you try to use shares and retweets and like get things going. Well, what was interesting is that the guy that was suggesting this had this idea of like how to strategically get more shares on a tweet, right? And it's his idea, right? And so typically when it comes to like leadership or getting projects done, that you have a good idea, you can't, you got to put your ideas and stuff like that on paper, right? And then let people know what it is. His immediate response was like, here's my idea. Oh, you know what? I'll have someone else reach out to them and make that connection and see if they can retweet it, if they can get the connection for us and have them do it. But I got slightly triggered from that, and I was just like, well, I think this is instead of being in the public chat and going like, hey man, I think this would be a really good idea for you. I sent him a private message. I sent him a DM, and I said, hey man, I felt like this was really good, like talking point for you as someone, for myself, who's actively building communities and trying to take a real big leadership role in the St. Pete area. Right. I said, hey, this would be advantageous of you just to reach out with them and build that relationship. Right. I was just like, well, while we know someone that has that relationship with them, I was like, you're in this space. This is your wheelhouse, right? Like, go connect with other people in this space. So then you can kind of like have this network effect, right? Of like, you just know people that are in the similar lane as you, right? And his response to me was fascinating, because he's like, Yeah, this was something that we talked about before, but we all, as a consensus, people, we all agree that it'd be beneficial if the person who knows him reaches out to him in order to get that relationship built, so to speak, right? And then I told him, I was like, if you go and reach out to him and you connect with them, go have lunch, have coffee, build that relationship. I was like, you may be in a position where you can work on that project and get to retweet yourself, right? His response to me was like, yeah, I just want to be mindful with my time with them. If they're uncomfortable doing it, then I'll do it, right? Like the person who had the idea didn't want to take the action to do and then get the process done, would rather have just pawned it off on someone else. So I texted Dylan, I was like, dude, this is like super frustrating, right? I was just like, all you're going to go do is just connect with this person so that way you can be friends with them and then possibly do a collaboration later on, not looking for the immediate result that you're looking for now, right? Like so yeah, it just triggered me because I was just like, dude, you just go and build the relationship, right? Like it's your project, right? It's your idea. So don't you think you would want the relationship and the pieces that come with that? Because so for example, I think a similar along the lines of like your YouTube videos, right? When we first started out, your biggest thing that you had with me was like, I don't want to do graphic design. I don't want to create thumbnails. And I was just like, but do you want to know how it's supposed to be from your brain to paper? And then you can tell someone else like, hey, can you make this better? This is the best I got, right? Then it's an easier conversation, right? So I found it really interesting and I got triggered because I was like, how's this guy saying in his business that he's a leader and has these great ideas, but won't take the initiative to just do it himself?
Gotcha. Well, so okay, so from the guy's standpoint, it's like, he knows he wants it done, but he has the belief that because he doesn't already have the relationship, somebody else probably does that, if they don't want to do it, then he'll take it over, right?
Yep.
Seems like kind of the frame he's holding. So Wally, before we go into it, like being unbiased, because I know Phung's your brother, right? What's your thought on the situation? Is the guy right in doing this? Is he wrong? Do you agree, disagree?
So I think in general, I agree, but in this particular context, I would disagree. Just because I think it's a matter of status of the person you're trying to contact, right? And some, like for example, like Jason Capital, right? If somebody just randomly messages Jason Capital, it doesn't matter who you are, like, and you don't have a lot of following or anything, and you're not anybody, he's not going to message you back. He's not going to talk to you, right? Um, the particular entity we're talking to is somebody of status in the crypto community. So he would be a little more difficult to get to. Not to say he couldn't take the initiative to do it himself, but I do think that that's the one factor that is the differentiator, is like the level of status of the person that you're trying to connect with, because you do need a relationship to connect with somebody if they are somebody of status. That's it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So
I definitely
more
agree with
tactful.
that.
Yeah, definitely more tactful because of who they're going to reaching out to, right? Because I mean we find this a lot, right? And I think because I remember when I asked Fung about this individual, right? You guys also had like kind of like guided him to the point where he's also starting to outsource tasks and hire help into other categories, right? And so now he's kind of in the position where he wants to protect his time, which we see this a lot with people that are in business and entrepreneurship, right? But like, so at the level, I don't know anything about this person, as you guys know, for context of everybody that's watching this, I have no idea. But the level that he's at now, obviously going to an outsourcing, I mean, what kind of level in business of entrepreneurship is this person at? Is he kind of more like starting phase? Has he been like going for a while? Is he ready for scale? Like, where would you guys say he's at in terms of level?
Honestly, I would say he's looking at actually like scaling a little bit. Like he wants more processes and more things because he see how much time he's gotten back.
So I would say he's well past the starter phase. Like, I mean, in terms of like the revenue is consistent and he has like like it's definitely trackable, right, at this point. So he's got a track record. I would say that he's at the point where he's got to decide how much more he wants to develop the business, or does he want to go deep or does he want to go wide? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So if and I think you had said this, Fong, like he considers himself the quote unquote visionary of his business, right? He's the visionary.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
his business, right? Of course, you're
Yeah.
going to be the visionary of that.
Right. So when he says that he wants to protect his time and he's, having other people do these things and outsource the task, is he still using his time towards productive activities on the side? Because the reason why I ask, because this is what I see a lot of people do, is they understand, okay, I'm in business, I want to protect my time, I'm ready for doing this and that, I'm ready to go and outsource, and then they just start going and outsourcing things. But in my opinion, and from books I've read, like clockwork, right? Everyone talks about this, is when you outsource a task, you still must be doing the higher level revenue producing activities, right? So in my case, like I do sales is number one for me, like in anything, right? Sales must still happen, generating conversations, closing deals, so in my case, if I go and outsource things like this editing, video editing, I don't have time for that because I'm too busy managing the team, running sales calls, hopping on follow-ups, and actually doing an activity that generates freaking revenue. So it makes sense for me to outsource those tasks, right? So would you say in this guy's particular case that that's what he's doing? Is he out there like still doing revenue producing activities, or is he just quote unquote staying the visionary and just outsourcing?
I would say it's a little bit more, I think he's on the line of that, right? Okay. Where he's not 100% sure where he wants to like grow his business, meaning like he hasn't got a clear vision on what he wants to do with it, right? And this goes back to like something that we've had in private discussions, right? On like, what is the real objective of your business? What level are you trying to get to, right? Is it more of just like a revenue thing, or are you actually trying to help like, people get their stuff launched into the space, right? And so that's more of a him question on that. So I can't 100% answer that because I just don't know his goals, right? And even though if I've asked him what his goals are, something like that, he wasn't able to respond to me. But Wally may have a better indication since he kind of works a little closely with him.
Yeah, great. So I think that in terms of your question specifically, where it's like, is he still doing revenue generating activities? Yes and no. The difference between you and him is just that your specific skill set is the revenue generating stuff, right? You do the sales, you do the calls, you do those things. That's not his skill set, right? He actually outsourced the sales. So his executive assistant or whatever, they do all the sales, all the scheduling and all that stuff for his business. So he doesn't have to focus on the sales side, the revenue generating side, but he does still have to work on the tactical side, the marketing, and making sure that the traffic stays up and like in terms of the marketing.
Okay. And do you guys agree with that? Like, and so like, listen, the reason why I'm asking is it's a good topic because in the sense of outsourcing, so cool. He has sales outsource and he wants to quote unquote protect his time. But then you have people like, freaking billionaire Mark Cuban who acquires the Mavericks. And on the day he comes onto the team, people on his team are like, oh, what are you doing? We got this. He's like, no. He literally picks up the phone, calls every single person who has, season box seating tickets and says, hey, I just acquired the team. And I want to introduce myself and see if you guys will still remain season ticket holders. Right. And, and Mark Cuban said like, no, this is, as owner, this is my responsibility. Right. He's a billionaire, his time's valuable. Right. Yep. So in the case of just playing devil's advocate, in Phung's scenario, like, yeah, sure. It makes sense that it's hard to outreach to somebody who's of higher status. This individual could take responsibility and do so, but what's y'all's opinion? What's right? What's wrong? And if he's not putting that activity of protecting his time into something that's even higher level than what he outsourced for sales, you see what I'm saying? If I pay $10 out here, but this activity is making me 100, that's the whole point of outsourcing. So do you guys agree with what he's doing, or do you think it just doesn't make sense?
So in my honest opinion, right, I think because he's at a certain status that he can use that to his advantage, right? And so I think he discounts himself. I don't think he's right. I don't think he's necessarily wrong. I think there's just a better way of him going about that he's just not seeing, right? And then I think it's more about where I harp on like building the relationship part in businesses, right? Like just like Mark Cuban calling season box ticket holders, right? He's building the relationship with each person, right? Yep. How many times do you have a phone call from the exact business owner that's making, he's making $1 million, $100 million a month, right? Like, and you get a personalized phone call. It's like, hey, just want to introduce myself. I'm the new person, such and such. what's up? I would love to talk to you, right? And I think it's that type of leverage that, a lot of people don't think about, right? And so that's kind of like what triggered me was like, it's like, dude, you've like, don't belittle your status by no means on where you're at. Like you can definitely have that conversation with him, whether you want to believe it or not. Right. And so I just think I don't think he's doing it wrong. I just don't think he had the right confidence. And then when I see someone not have that confidence and believing that they can take the charge and do it right, it triggers me a lot because I was once that type of person who wouldn't take action. And because I felt like I didn't have the right confidence until I started breaking my own beliefs in that. Right. And this is like, no, like I need to build the relationship because as a business owner, like I want to do everything from top down, right? From bottom up. I want to be in the weeds. I want to know what's happening, right? That's like why one of the biggest reasons why I built a local, networking group was because the small business owners is like they're in the weeds all day, every day. That's what drives like a lot of the economic things in a city, right? So that's like,
So what's the relationship of the atmosphere of like, obviously when he posted this and said, hey, can somebody do this, right? Basically outsource the task. Cause it seems like this kind of like group of community of contact that you're in. I mean, obviously you guys aren't employees. It sounds like you're all kind of like in the community. Would you guys just say that you're all just partners?
I would say think of it more of like a volunteer group, right?
Cool. Okay. So good prime example. So in this scenario, right, it's a little bit different, right? We're not outsourcing this to quote unquote your employees.
Yep.
Right. It's all a group of people who are on the same mission and same vision. Right. And then you have someone who comes in and just posts and says, hey, someone take care of this. Right. How do you establish the dynamic for people that are in those situations of like, hey, we have this community. We're all on the same path. We're not we're not necessarily like employees of each other. We're all just trying to work together and accomplish this task. But then you have somebody who's not taking action. How would somebody handle that type of dynamic? How does the situation change?
So, I mean, I'll definitely hop in for just a second. And so the dynamic is basically the willing volunteer, right? Like you got to willingly participate, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
So everything in there is willing participation. So if you participate and you don't execute at a certain level, that's great. But just like in terms of how the community works and how people are rewarded, it's based on the work, right? People who produce work, people who like actually make the engine run are going to be the ones that have the say and have the pull. So if you like lack on execution, then the weight of your contribution is going to go down slowly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, people will stop looking at you for leadership. They won't include you into certain projects because, well, now you're just asking a lot, right? So when it comes to like, when I think about this, especially in community, the community that we're in, when it's the whole willing participant, right? It's that instead, it's they're no different in business, right? You don't immediately ask for the sale, right? You don't immediately ask for favors and things like that because people are connected and things like that. I think there's just a better way of communication. A lot of people, so I equate it to I think we had a discussion a while back on like just sales in general, right? Using the word program in a sales script, right? When we were talking
Oh
to
yeah,
somebody,
backfires every time.
right. Really,
Every
right?
time.
Immediately it puts in that program into someone's brain, right? Like this complicated process that hones in, right? So ever since we've had that discussion about like terminology, right, it's kind of stuck with me a little bit. So instead of immediately going directly for the sale, right, in this case, like immediately asking for someone else to go and do outreach, right, it's, hey, could you invite this person out to one of our events, and I would love to an introduction to chat with them, right?
I like
So
that.
instead of taking the immediate approach of like, hey, can I get someone in here, like, hey, can I get the introduction, let me take the process a little bit longer, right? Let me extend it by 2 or 3 steps because I know this is what we need, but I need to be the one to build the relationship, because if I'm going to lead that project, I should be the one talking and having that conversation, right? So that's what I think about a lot of the time here, is how to effectively like take leadership of that project by going, I just need the introduction, I'll take care of the rest.
Right. Well, what about in the dynamic of, because it's what's interesting about it is if you have this community of people who obviously, and they're all at different levels, right? And not necessarily maybe everyone doesn't really kind of know of like what level each other is at, right? You know, take y'all's example, right? What Wally has accomplished in terms of generating revenue, his skill sets with, you know, someone like Jason Capital, or even if someone as high status as Jason Capital were to be a part of an organization like this, and yep, you know, you're all part of the community, and then someone's like, hey, you know, go do this, and you know, someone at Wally's level or even JC's level would want to go to another individual and be like, hey, you know, wants to give them advice, but maybe they're just not receptive of it, right? It's like, you know, so it kind of, it's this weird conundrum, because how do you say like, dude, I've generated fucking multiple millions of dollars, ran organizations, a beast at branding, know how to grow a company. But then, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of people in the crypto and NFT world, you know, just because they're a part of it now, a lot of people put themselves on a high horse, even though they haven't really like accomplished anything. They think just because, oh yeah, this is going somewhere, we have this amazing idea, you know, this idea is going to be fruitful, and it kind of like boosts them up, but they haven't actually accomplished anything. So how do you manage that dynamic of like, okay, I'm at this level, but this person may not be receptive. I don't want to come across as an asshole, right? But like, you haven't done shit.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So how do you guys manage that kind of dynamic for what even the levels you guys are at?
That's funny, because we were actually talking about this a little bit earlier today, right? When actually, we're talking about this last night with another fellow community member, right? When it is that type of there is that type of disconnect and misunderstanding, results is what matters, right? So Wally and I take it a lot upon ourselves to what I call steer the ship, right? There's a lot of captains hanging out and stuff like that who say that they're captains, but no one's taking the wheel, right? And so we took it upon ourselves. It's like, I'm going to take the wheel and I'm going to show you. Yeah, keep talking, keep misunderstanding and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, what'll happen is that I've put together the idea that I had. I put together the framework. I talked to the people that are necessary to have this executed. I did a value exchange, and then we got shit done.
Yeah, just to piggyback that, I would say the example is 100% lead by example, right? I mean, and that's a great business principle too in general. If you want something done, you can't really give ideas. You got to do it, right? Especially in a community like that where people are, we have a lot of smart people in there, right? There's a lot of ideas that come in from multiple different angles all the time, right? And it's funny because I literally will tell them, I'm like, hey guys, like these ideas are super great, like thank you. But what are we gonna actually do with them, right? And I have to be that guy. Like I literally am that guy every day, every time we're in a meeting. And I'm also the same guy that doesn't let meetings go longer than 30 to 45 minutes, if at all possible, because with all these ideas going, people just talking and like they feel like they're contributing, but they're really just causing more confusion, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And then when you go to try to execute one idea, the next time you have a meeting, people throw fucking more ideas, and you can't stay on just one path, right? So it's like kind of like controlling a herd and being like, okay, cool. No, you guys are excited. Let's put this on the back burner. Let's just set a plan and go and execute, which is why everyone falls into the trap of shiny object syndrome, right? They're just looking for all these new strategies and ideas and really anchoring down to like that one thing.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, to your point, it is kind of like herding. I think one of our friends said it kind of was like the best. She said it's like herding feral cats. Like, it's like they're all like pawing at you and like like they're doing their things and they but it is kind of like that, and it is literally lead by example, cut through the confusion and then show results, right? Because in this particular environment, they're not going to look at the people that contributed ideas and didn't do anything. They're going to say, oh, like this person said they were going to do this, they did it, they executed on it, look at this awesome result. And they're like, okay, well, like in this scenario, if I want to run something very similar to what this person contributed with, I'm going to go with their input because they already crushed it for us. Like, why would I look at someone else's idea, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's perfect timing, right? So I went on and just on the subject of like employees, accountability, leadership. I went on YouTube, pulled it up. I'm gonna share my screen here for everybody to see. And, one of the goats, Seth Godin himself, has an awesome video called Leadership versus Management, right? What it means to make a difference. And, this is a prime example. He says here on the left-hand side that managers will actually be like, do this, but leaders will actually be like, let's go. They take the charge. They actually do exactly what Wally said. Like, let's just go do it. Lead by example, which I agree with. I think that anyone in the case of like this scenario should be the one who leads by example to show, instead of just going and just saying, hey, go do this task, or hey, contact this person, right? Oh, I got to protect my time. Like you get way more done. And I think you guys know this back in the days of network marketing, right? Your team's only going to do as much as they see you doing, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to run with or without you. But if you don't run, they're going to do nothing. Right.
Yep.
And another good one. Go ahead.
And interesting, just to piggyback on that real quick. And it's like in organizations, and just like when you hire somebody for your team or anything like that, like everybody has this paradigm where they're like, oh, I've accomplished all this stuff already, so they should care about what I have to say. But the reality is that this is your first time interacting with this person. They don't give a fuck at all what you have to say at all. Yeah. And so you actually show them that you know what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. And just by like doing and stuff and be like, oh, holy shit. I think too, because you guys have your meetings, what, weekly? Do y'all have like these meetings like once a week?
Many meetings.
Oh my gosh. There's like so many different meetings. Yeah. There's like a meeting almost every other day.
So I guess in that type of dynamic, I guess the only way to kind of show the credibility factor, just y'all's point of leading, would just be to start off, I guess, if you're the person of a cohort like that, and you're just like, hey guys, here's the results. Here's what I've accomplished since the last meeting that we executed on in terms of an idea. This is working. We're double down on it. When everyone else is just showing up with ideas, I think that would kind of level up the status, right?
That's pretty much what's happening, actually.
That's literally,
there you go.
Described it to a T.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, like because we just ran an event this past weekend.
Hit the boner on the head. That was a knowledge boner.
So it was I hit the boner on the head. But this last event was essentially the official like launch of this community, and we had about 80 people there, and we had over 120 people RSVP.
Only 2 weeks of promo time too. 14 days. Yeah.
Nice. 14 days of promo time for an official launch. Got the venue locked in and everything like that. And that was us. That was literally us going, we're gonna steer this ship, and we're gonna show you what this community can really do.
Huge. Yeah. So in terms of accountability too, found this other one. For those that know kind of the entrepreneur world, the Hermosis, like Alex and Layla are huge, definitely big fans of their channel, and I really resonate with Alex himself. But what's interesting about this dynamic on the channels is Alex is more of kind of like the branding, the marketing inside. And the reason why his companies are so successful is because his wife, Layla, handles everything from operations. Like they literally have their perfect dynamic of where he's here and she's just a freaking monster operations. And what's cool is both their channels cover just that, the same thing. So her channel is all about operations. And she did a video called How World-Class Leaders Hold Employees Accountable. And one thing that she said in this video that I really like, want to share with everyone, is that she thinks of the role of CEO as CAO. So instead of executive officer, she thinks it's chief accountability officer. Right. We're really being the weeds of holding everyone within the organization accountable, but also understanding that if you're the CEO in terms of the executor, right? So for those people that see this, like, oh, I'm the visionary of my company. Well, if you don't have an executor in your company, if you don't have a CEO that you hired, like you have to be the fucking executor. Yep. Period. Like somebody has to execute, whether or not you think you're going to go and just start on day one and start, outsourcing tasks. Like somebody has to pave the way first. And still continue paving the way while hiring and leading by example, which is, to Wally's point, like it has to be done. So you can't call yourself a visionary and CEO and not execute on those tasks, right? And one of the kind of things I like here is she kind of broke accountability down into two phases, right? The left side is tactical. Tactical is things like, all right, hey guys, if you show up to a meeting, like be presentable, like don't show up in a wife beater, right? Here's the times, like show up on time. Just laying the foundations for stuff that a lot of people feel uncomfortable to kind of bring up, right? Just because, you kind of have that dynamic with your team if you know entrepreneurship. And developmental is just exactly that, like things like skills and mindset and having them develop in their career and holding them accountable to like learning those tasks and stuff. So tactical is tactical, developmental is exactly what it is. But I thought it was just an interesting perspective in the terms of accountability and actual execution, because I think a lot of people don't really talk about it that way. I think a lot of people get into business and have a goal and they put themselves in such a high horse that they just don't think that they should be the one executing. And I just don't think that's the right way to go about it, in my opinion. Right. That's why I hate lifestyle entrepreneurs. So right now, just listening to the show, like I hate that term, because it means just like, oh yeah, just have your business like fund yourself, and I want to travel and just make all this income. And it's like, well, dude, somebody has to be running the business, and someone has to lead, and somebody has to pay the way. Like that sounds cool in theory, but unless it's
Somebody's
like
doing something.
investments, yeah, if it's a business that's providing, you're fucking working, right? If it's investments that's providing, then yeah, cool, it's passive. But so on terms of accountability is another good one, right? Because we run into this even with our organization. I'd like your thoughts on this. So let's say you're the visionary, you're the CEO, you're holding people accountable. It's your business, your brand. You know, you guys have your own goals, and you hire, you start outsourcing tasks, and there's people on your team, right? Now, what happens if somebody on your team, doesn't agree with like what you're doing for branding, or disagrees with a strategy, right? In terms of taking feedback, like even at this guy's example, if you guys give him feedback and give your opinion, is there a point where you should be receptive to the feedback of even of your employees and peers? Or is it like, hey guys, this is my idea, this is my thing, you guys are here to be a part of it, but listen, look, dude, it's my way, like either deal with it or not, right? What do you guys think of how to kind of draw the line there and be receptive to that kind of feedback from outside sources?
Cool. I'll hop in. So I think the first thing that to consider is the level of experience of the person that's talking. Always,
Okay.
right? Meaning that like if it's just somebody that's been there for a month or two and they're giving you feedback on your, I don't really care.
Yep.
In terms of like length of experience in your company, and then length of experience in the skill set that you hired there for, I guess two levels, right? Because sometimes people, when they first see something, they just don't understand it, and so they're like, oh, I don't like that, and so I don't think that's valid feedback, right? Now I think that if somebody has been with your company and like sold with you for a while, and especially like been an intricate part of developing your programs and things like that, if they give you feedback on the marketing, you should definitely listen, right? Like that's the requirement of you as the business owner, because you're not necessarily always in the weeds and can't see at the level that they see, right? So that's the trust that you develop in the people that you hire to give you that feedback so that you can make decisions. Just to give that a little more context, right? So for when I was running sales with JC, one system that we set up was a way to give the marketing team like actual feedback from the sales data, right? So we were going through conversations and basically like showing the marketing team, hey, this is what the person was interested in when they first talked to us, right? They kind of mentioned stuff about this video, or like they mentioned this keyword, and that's how they came in, right? So then giving that feedback loop to the marketing team allowed them to make better content, so that way we could generate higher quality leads, even though we were posting less content at the time. Does that make sense? So
Oh,
like
absolutely.
yeah, developing these that's an essential part, like getting the feedback from your employees, the people that work with you, to tune those systems in, right? Because you don't want to have your bias always be the thing that drives the marketing, right? Because it's your customers, right? And your customers change. A 28-year-old male right now is different than 28-year-old male 10 years ago, right? You got different struggles. They probably have more problems with porn, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, versus like 10 years ago. So it's just like the identity changes, so you need to always have that in mind. So that's my 2 cents.
True. I agree with that. I mean, we do that now. We have our sales team coordinate with marketing. And I mean, even down to things like objections and resistance, so that, when it comes to marketing, we know what kind of content to create to be able to help the sales team with overcoming it. So those definitely go into unison. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. What about you, Phung?
Yeah. So to kind of piggyback on that, like what happens in that, so because that's really good for like the business side too. And I think it goes back to like, what kind of business are you trying to build, right? Because then that allows you to kind of cultivate a culture inside, right? So like as a business owner itself, right? Like for me to hire someone, I want them to be bought in on the things that I'm doing, right? Now that's if I'm hiring internally, right? So if it's an organization and I have a team of 10 people, right, I want them to be fully bought in on the things they're doing, but also being aware of like their own goals and ambitions as well too, right? Does does my business allow them that capability, right? Like, do they have that type of like freedom control, where they're like, okay, cool, I'm really going to work in this business for the next like 6 years and really grow, help them grow and develop the things like it. Cause I believe in the business owner, I believe in the mission, I believe in the vision. Right. And what happens in that, right? Like you'll build a really good team. And then as the business owner, as like the CEO, you would want them to be receptive of their employees and things like that that's happening, because they're the ones that's talking directly into the market. Right. And then you want to make sure that you're being fair to them. You want to be fair to your employees, but also to your market. Right. So as a business owner, it's not, I think Wally's mentor, Jason, always, his phrase is, determined on the outcome, flexible in the method. Right. So it's being able to be fluid and being receptive to like what your employees or your contractors are saying that's happening in the market, and being able to pivot accordingly, but still being able to maintain like your goals, your ambitions, and what you've really aligned on. Right. Like, all right, cool. Like if if a sales guy is saying, hey, like my VSL is fucked up, or the VSL is not messaging well with what's happening in the sales conversation, can we change it? I would want to be receptive to that and go, okay, cool, what's being said, and then all right, let's workshop it out and like figure out what's in the VSL that needs to be worked. Right. Kind of goes back to that languaging and verbiage and stuff like that too. Now I can't get caught up in my own self as a business owner and being like, nah, like my way or the highway, right? I have to be open-minded to know that like I may be wrong, because live feedback is the best. And that's like that's why us as business owners and entrepreneurs seek mentorship, is because the thing that we're doing may not be working because we want to get to a certain level.
Gotcha. Cool. And then so, finally, let's kind of recap it out. What's the game plan with this individual? How are we gonna move forward?
Lead by example. It just goes back to leading by example in this case, right? I had funny enough, I had a conversation with an individual yesterday, with someone else completely separate, right? I actually didn't tell you this, but he's also in this community, but he's also a business owner, right? And then at some point he felt he was in the beginning stages of this community that got built up and stuff like that, and he was feeling some type of way. He wasn't being included in all the conversations that were happening and stuff like that. He felt like his ideas weren't being validated. Like conversations were being moved around him and things like that too. And then I had to lead by example on this one and go, hey man, like I had to have a serious conversation with you, on two levels, right? This is like one, like what's your actual goals and ambitions and that you're trying to achieve with your business, right? Then how do you see this community? How do you see yourself being a part of this community with those goals? Right? Because you can work with both in tandem, but you can't be, if you're feeling unseen and not received and unheard, then are you showing up and being combative and always being confrontational with people, or are you actually showing up and being receptive? Right? So my recommendation for him was to show up and be receptive, right? Just take the feedback. You don't have to put in your 2 cents. Listen to what everyone else is doing first, and then see how you can fit in, right? See how you can see your ideas get placed into the framework, right? So it's about like to me, I equate it to like, yeah, look, with everyone in this community, it's going to be like we have to lead by example and show that it can be done, like by your own hands.
Right. I mean, so do y'all think like it's better in those type of environments just so people don't feel like quote unquote their ideas are not being validated? Just literally just assign certain categories of roles for each person, where the only ideas they're allowed to put forth is just that role and responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Instead of have everyone just kind of throw them out there. Is that kind of how you guys do things, or no?
No, everyone kind of has like their own like lane that they think they're really good at or they want to be a part of, right? Like you have developers, you have marketers, you have different artists, people have their different skill sets. What they're not what they're not 100% honest with themselves is that they mainly use this as a social event, as a social gathering type thing, right? Like reality is that a lot of people are really looking for friends and camaraderie and a community to really build with, right? And that's what they have to be upfront with. But this is a community I want to be a part of, right? And so then you figure out how you mesh with each part of the community, not just one thing, right? Because you want to grow and develop with it. Now, a lot of people don't think about creating a community that way, but you want to be actively involved in each piece. May not be leading each piece, but you want to at least see what happens.
Cool. Sorry. So final curveball. This is gonna be really good for the people that are listening and viewing. Okay, because a lot of people don't know this about these two, Phung and Wally. Okay, so they have three dynamics. Number one, they have their business. So they're the business dynamic between each other and their VAs and everyone they have hired. Number two is the community dynamic, which is different, right? It's more unique. You know, not everyone, they're not employees necessarily of each other. Everyone's starting on. And three, they have an interesting one, which is family dynamic. They actually have businesses on the side with their actual family, right? So how the hell, you know, when it comes from mixing family to business, how are you guys managing that dynamic of like, hey, we're doing this in this space. I know you guys have stuff going on in crypto, you have stuff going on in real estate, but you know, from the family, you know, not necessarily everyone in your family is into business entrepreneurship. You guys have these experience, but how do you navigate that conversation with actual like blood relatives of like, hey, you know, we've done this, we've done that, you know, they're really excited with ideas, but maybe they don't know how to execute or anything. And without coming across like, hey, confrontational and still keeping it professional without, you know, pissing off your siblings and your parents and all that stuff. So, you know, give everyone feedback on that because that's an interesting topic.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So for me in particular, I generally ignore them and pepper them with my social media until they are receptive to what I have to say.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like generally speaking, like it's kind of like I'm the youngest in the family, so it's kind of like beating going against a wall in terms
Yeah.
of like fighting that battle. Like the age gap is big, like it's just not the good dynamic to work off of. But what they do see is my social media. They see, oh, like he's traveling, he's like got, he's doing some cool stuff, hanging out at these, community events, all these parties and stuff. Like maybe I'm not doing that. They're not doing that. So it's like maybe he knows something, right? It's like maybe, and so it's like it's kind of like that residual effect of like over time they've kind of seen, they've seen me evolve over 2018 to now, and it's like it seems like he knows something. You know what I mean? And so
But be
that,
honest though. So like so from the time you guys have started, do you guys feel like a lot of progress has been made from the sense of like stuff that they're supposed to be held accountable for and doing versus what you guys are doing? Or do you guys feel like it's like, okay, well, shit, we're going to have to just take everything off the plate because they don't know how to execute. And it's just like a tough conversation to have. And you guys should be way further because people just stuff's not just being done and you just don't want to have that conversation.
Gotcha. No, I think it's fine. In terms of execution, I've led the front on a couple of our family projects, like by myself, and
Mhm.
like done the road work, done driving. Like, I don't want to get too into all that, but like I put the legwork in to get that project going.
Yeah.
So like me being the youngest, the eldest brothers, like their egos inflate. They're like, oh shit, like little bro is trying to take care of the family. Like, what are we gonna do? Like,
Yeah.
and so they try to figure out how to contribute by themselves. So another example of leading by example, right? Where it's like you put the leg forward and it puts the pressure on everyone else to perform now. Cause it's like everybody has ideas, but then when you put your money where your mouth is, like, who's still there, right?
Yeah,
I like
I,
that.
I definitely agree with that, right? It's definitely another like example for us in particular, right? Like, so, we definitely can't speak on other entrepreneurs and other families and other business owners, so to speak. But like, we have a very unique dynamic on like how we do business, how we built our family business, how we engage with communities. Um, just because of like what we were trying to build, like as far as like in our family situation and things like that, right? Like, no one's gonna believe the younger brothers, right? I think for the longest time, I'm still pretty sure my mom thinks that I just still party, even though I've like lost a bunch of weight and stuff like that. Like, I think she's just now deviated over to being one accepting of my beard, and then two, like understanding that like I'm actually actively building things that are worthwhile, right? And it was more of like you got to break that belief pattern in your family, because they only think of like one thing of you, right? It's they're like, he'll always be like that, that's the only thing that he'll kind of do, whatever. When you're like, nah, that's not the only thing I'm gonna do. Like, I'm gonna show you. In fact, I'm gonna do so well that I'm gonna put money back in your pocket. And they're like, wait, what?
Here's
Like
here's an anecdote about that too. It's so funny. My mom, so for part of our family project, it does increase the cost of your electricity bill. I'll just say that. So my mom called me on the phone the other day, and she was like, she was like, all right, like you're gonna pay me for this electricity bill, right? And it's funny because my mom is like the beneficiary of the family, so she's like shelled out a lot of money to people, and she doesn't mind.
yeah,
That's just how
she's taking care of like everybody in our
yeah.
family, and then in everybody else's family, and then some.
Yeah. So it's hilarious because she calls me and she's like, all right, like you're going to send me money for this electricity bill, right? And so she calls me and she says how much, and I send it to her immediately, like in like 30 seconds, right? And she's like, oh, is that what this is like? Said receiving money. It's like, can I call anytime? I was like, wow. I was like, oh, she's gonna take advantage of this. But I'll say that to say that like yeah, definitely the relationship has changed quite a bit with the family. But it did take time, and it took like me not fighting them and me just like showing them, hey, like I'm doing stuff. Like you can follow me if you want. I don't care if you do, but like here's what I'm doing, and you'll hear about me later. You know what I mean? Or they'll see
Yeah,
a video on social media or
but
something.
for it being like a family business, I mean, like technically you could be like, I mean, well, hey, listen, mom, me and Fung are doing this, your brothers are doing that, with dad doing this, like, y'all's contribution is handling the cost of the bill, right? That could be their role and responsibility, right? Which would be a tough conversation to have. So, would that be the case of like, hey, yeah, we're doing all this stuff, but you handle utility costs, like
Well, yeah,
contribution.
yeah. That's the funny part, right? Is that we've actually had these conversations already. Like we had these conversations up front, and it's funny because I was talking to our mom about this, just in general about building our family business, and I told her, I said, had it been 6 years ago, had it been 6 or 7 years ago, I'd have said, hell no. Like I am not building a business with my family, and I was like, they all can suck it, right? But since I've done a lot of personal development, right? Did a lot of like studying, understanding business, and then really want to understand like what I'm trying to accomplish in life. And then I'm like, oh shit, like I'm in a much better place. It'd be really cool if I had my family with me and stuff like that, right? We had like a cool family project that was like, you know, that's like that, that's the American thing, right? Like this family money. What's family money? So we're like, what's that like? And then here we are, right? But 5 years ago, I'd be like, nah, because we were just all of us, especially with us. There's five boys, right? We're all all men that have like crazy egos at some point, but we all been humbled over the last like 10 years. And so we just kind of were able to like come to a different conversation and how we wanted to leave a legacy project as brothers, right? Not necessarily as like just a family, but we're like, what is something that us as brothers want to do, because you know we got each other's back no matter what. It doesn't matter how much at the end of the day that we argue or fight, but we've always had each other's back at the end of the day.
So what happens, again, just hypothetical, I'm not saying this is the case, but business grows within the family dynamic, wildly successful, but you two are basically the forefront of majority of the success, right? And you have one or two brothers, or maybe let's just say one, black sheep of the business who literally is profiting from it, but has done zero contribution, like nothing. Right. And, living it up, like enjoying the money that's coming in, talking about it, celebrating, right? In this hypothetical universe, like, how would you guys perceive it? Would y'all just be like, all right, whatever, their family, it is what it is. They can just enjoy the fruits of our labor. Or would you be like, okay, resentful, and eventually it's the point, but like, look, man, you're not contributing at all. We're still like growing and stuff. We have to cut you from the business. Right. What would you guys do in that extreme?
Great question. So
Yeah.
so I'll take it for sure on this one. So we actually, it's funny, we
had this conversation
already. We already had this conversation. And
I'm so good.
like we actually had this conversation.
Yeah. So, and we said, what's the scenario? What will we do exactly? And so I think it comes down to the reason and purpose for the business, right? And who am I providing for? So, so for our family business specifically, in terms of our project, we are only looking at our nucleus, right? Meaning like my mom, my dad, the brothers, and the kids, like of our main immediate family. Not trying to take care of my mom's family, not trying to take care of my dad's family. Like that's outside of scope, if that makes sense, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
so in this case, in this specific scenario, I don't care where the like it's split and built for that purpose. So if you wanna if you wanna live off the family money that we did and you can and you're comfortable, sure, that's your right. Like by all means, like that's what we did it for.
Yeah. And then to piggyback on that, right? Like for someone who doesn't really contribute, they just don't have any decision making power, right?
Yep, exactly.
Their vote on business decisions on like what happens gets forfeited over to one of the siblings, right?
I like that.
Right. So this is like we're we as a family.
But is that but when you guys say that their decision gets pushed aside, are they aware of this, or is just something that you two are just aware? You guys had literally had this conversation.
They're aware.
No, we
Okay.
all sat at a family table and we had these discussions. We're doing this straight Yakuza style, bro. Like
nice.
we were not joking around. Like we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this right.
It's like you get to say, like everybody gets to say, but it's
say.
like in terms of like specific decisions, like that require the like the touching of the work. It's like the people who put in the work are gonna be the ones that make the decision, and you're just gonna sign off on it. Like
you have to be okay with that because
you get a vote, but you really don't get a vote, but you get money. So
so why don't you guys just take that same concept and apply it to the community? Everyone like working together.
Everybody's going to be receptive of that.
Right. But how do you make, but that's what's so interesting about the dynamic, right? Is like, you know, it's a tough conversation from family, but at the same time, people could argue, well, it's my family. We bicker all the time. We're going to have tough conversations, whatever, like it's part of it. But then when you're in like a community of people that doesn't have that family dynamic, but you're trying to accomplish this goal, and you know that, okay, people are going to be butthurt. Some people are going to be excited by ideas, but they're not going to do shit. Right. You know, and other people are going to do stuff and contribute, and everyone just wants to be like a part of something. But at the end of the day, everyone's aware of the room of these, you know, 80-20 rule. The 20% of people like, okay, cool. We're going to take validation them. Okay. These guys, they never do shit. Yeah. Okay. Here they are. They're bickering. Right. You know, why not have that conversation, even if they're not receptive? And even if it hurts their feelings, do you still do it?
I think we actually kind of have in some instances. It's good. It just goes back to today's like topic in general, right? Is leading by example, right? Is that essentially what we lead with is results and then an explanation later, right? Like, I'm going to show you how this works, where it works, and this is what's going to come from it. And then you're gonna be like, oh, can you tell me how that worked? I'm like, yes, I can actually. Do you want to be a part of it next time? Right. So it really comes down to like, especially when it comes to community organizations, I think about just volunteering, right? Nonprofit organizations and volunteers, right? Volunteers get in there. I have no idea what the hell they're doing. I'm just like, do I move this box? Do I help this person? Should I do this? Like, that's a good question. You probably should do all of those. That's what volunteering is, right? And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, that's what you volunteer your time and you figure it out. But then that's part of the organization being able to lay out that foundation. Like they're, you know, us as leaders have to put that foundation first. And then people can go, okay, cool, that makes sense. And then they're allowed
the other side of that just is like the contributions, right? Meaning that like a lot of people don't understand like what's a valuable contribution versus like what's a non, like what's like, you know what I mean? There is value to a contribution. It's like an idea, not so valuable, kind of. It's like if we're points and if it was out of 100, it's like 1 point, right? But it's like execution,
like half a point. Like an idea is like half a point.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the huge knowledge boner moment to end it on for everyone that's here, that's tuning in today's episode, is no matter what the dynamic is, if you're your own business, you're in a community dynamic, a family business, in any case, when it comes to outsourcing or delegating tasks, always just lead by example. And from leading by example, taking the charge, moving forward with or without people, people will either fall in line and take pace and come along with you and be along for the ride, or, they won't. But still progress will be made and things will get done, and you will be viewed as the correct leader, as you should be. So thank you, as always, Phung and Wally, for showing up today for the episode, and for everyone that tuned in. Hope you guys are having a fantastic week, and I'll see you guys again on the next episode, the Knowledge Boner Experience. See you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.